Let's talk about love, shall we? Unrequited love, struggling love, painful heartbreak love. It can be a mystery, it can be frustrating, and we all want it, right? Hi, my name is Heather, and I am a relationship and empowerment coach. One of my favorite things to talk about is love and how to have healthy, connected relationships. So let's dig into the topic of emotional unavailability and how it may be impacting you and your love life. Let's start with, what does emotional unavailability actually mean? You can kind of get a sense of it from the words emotionally unavailable, unavailable for connection, unavailable for emotional connection. And I think that's a really important piece to remember as we have this conversation, so you can start to look and see how it shows up in your life. People who struggle with emotional connection, or those we label as emotionally unavailable, put barriers in the way, obstacles in the way of creating real connection, lasting connection, meaningful connection with people. To them, and to so many of us, real intimate connection feels scary. Being seen, risking being rejected feels really scary. And so people will protect themselves, put a kind of armor around their heart, hoping to prevent themselves from experiencing the kind of pain that can go along with that kind of rejection, while still in some way experiencing connection from an emotional standpoint. I've heard intimacy phrased as into me see, which really helps to kind of get what emotional intimacy is about. It's really allowing yourself to be available, to be seen, without all the armor and protection and facades that we can tend to wear sometimes. For a lot of us, we have history or experiences in our past that show us that sharing ourselves, showing up as fully ourselves, isn't actually a safe thing to do. That when we show up as fully us, that people will kind of reject us or reject parts of us. So we learn to edit. We learn to cover up pieces of ourselves, hide pieces of ourselves, dismiss or ignore pieces of ourselves, overcompensate for parts of ourselves. And that's all part of the experience of creating emotional unavailability. I'm so busy focused on these other pieces and protecting myself from these other pieces and trying to hide them from you, that I'm not actually available to connect on an emotional level with you. So let's talk about why emotional unavailability will develop. Along with our own experiences from our past of heartbreak and pain, rejection, most of us also haven't really experienced solid role models in watching our parents have great relationships. Part of what's included in great relationships is constructive, underlying constructive conflict, as well as repairing. That means that people have the freedom and space inside a relationship to express what their needs are, what their desires are, and how they're actually feeling without it creating some kind of major blow up or explosive conflict. Lots of us have the experience of either watching that kind of explosiveness in the household or experiencing silence whenever it comes up, like the silent treatment, ignoring, pretending everything's fine, even when it's not. And those things help teach us that having emotional connections with people is actually unsafe. So that's a big part of why we can experience emotional unavailability. We simply haven't learned how to properly connect with or effectively emotionally connect or make ourselves available for emotional connection with other people. Another part of what can happen inside of developing emotional unavailability are things like low self-worth. Like, if you actually knew me, you probably wouldn't like all of me. So I'm going to hide pieces of myself to pretend that I'm a different person than I actually am. In my mind, I'd be trying to make myself a better person or an easier to love person than I might actually think that I am. Another thing that can contribute to developing emotionally unavailable tendencies is when we've had the experiences in the past of our needs and our feelings not mattering as much. So either we have to fight really hard to get our needs and feelings addressed and cared for inside a relationship, or we've had the experiences of our needs and feelings just being completely dismissed, ignored, run over, shut down, that kind of thing. And when we have that kind of experience over and over, the likelihood of us being able to trust that other people are actually interested in how we feel, interested in what our needs are, is limited. I've also probably experienced being emotionally abandoned or burned in the past, where I have shared myself emotionally and then I have been rejected in some way. And that could be like the whole relationship ending, or it could also just be the experience of having someone emotionally withdraw from me sharing. Those things will all contribute to my perspective about whether or not it's safe to be sharing myself with another person. And those are all major contributing factors to emotional unavailability. So let me ask you, are you emotionally available? With all of that taken into consideration, do you think that you are emotionally available in relationships? Most of the time when I ask people that question, they'd say, of course I am. Of course, I want the connection. It's the other people who aren't available. It's the other people who aren't participating in the relationship the way I want them to. And what I would offer in those situations is, let's really have a look here and see. Often in that world of like attracts like, if I'm attracted to someone who is emotionally unavailable, it's likely that I've got some stuff going on over here about it. It can seem a little convoluted to fully understand or wrap your head around right away, but if I'm getting into relationships with people who are emotionally unavailable to me, that protects me from actually having to be emotionally available in the relationship. I have the experience of they're not available, so I don't actually get to open up. I don't have to open up in the relationship. I don't get to be seen because they're not asking for any of that from me. And that actually has me feel safe, stay safe inside the relationship. So it's an important thing to consider when you start looking at pointing the finger over there all the time at it's those people, it's someone else, it's the other side. That's the problem. And if I could just find the right person, this would be better. That isn't actually how it works. I had a friend once say to me, whenever you are pointing a finger over there, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at yourself. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, that anytime you're pointing over there, you're likely doing some projection. And it's important to start taking responsibility for yourself and how you actually feel if you want to start changing this dynamic for yourself. If that resonates, you might start considering something like, if you have thoughts of, if I could only be more like this, or if I could only stop doing that thing, or if I could only just fix that. So if I could be prettier, if I could be skinnier, if I could be funnier, if only I could be those things, then if that's part of a conversation that you have happening in the background for yourself about relationships, there's likely some version of emotional unavailability and the tentacles that it has floating around in the background for you. If you have the experience of really going into relationships hoping that they'll pick you versus standing in the perspective of, do I pick them? When you are putting yourself in a position of wanting to be chosen, like, do you pick me? Do you like me? Versus, do I like you enough to actually get into this relationship? That can also be a really big indicator about where you are in your level of comfort and sharing your emotions and allowing yourself to be truly seen. If you want to have that type of relationship where it's a real partnership, where you get to show up as fully you and you get to be supported, and I use the language of partnered, it will require that you're willing to emotionally share yourself. It will require that you're willing to look at yourself. It will require that you're willing to step into some of that uncomfortable territory of conflict, where you may have to say some things that make your partner uncomfortable. And it's feeling okay doing that, knowing that you'll be able to repair the relationship and likely become more connected and stronger because of it. But that takes something, and it's not something most of us are comfortable doing, at least in the conversations I have in the circles that I move in. Most people struggle with having those types of honest conversations. They think they can, but when it comes time for the rubber to hit the road, they struggle with it. So this was just dipping our toes into the topic of emotional unavailability, which is a broad topic. And I like to sort of break it into 3 pieces. It makes it easier to understand and digest. Give you some time to kind of think about what you've heard and test it out. I've also created some worksheets that go along with a blog series that I've written to help you be able to understand and really work through some of these pieces. So don't forget to click the links in the description box below about where to find the blog posts as well as the accompanying worksheets that can help you if you're ready to start doing some work on this. Breaking this pattern in your life isn't easy. Behaviors like this, patterns like this, come from a long line of experiencing emotional pain where you've learned over time how to suppress and repress pieces of yourself in order to maintain connection with other people. It's not easy, but if you're ready to finally break this pattern once and for all, then you'll want to stick around for my next video where we talk about how this develops in relationships, the impact of it, and when to recognize it in your life. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me for more great information about how to develop deeply connected emotional relationships that really matter and satisfy your spirit. I look forward to seeing you the next time. Thanks for watching.